Okay, so you've played Morgan Fairchild 9 times, more than any other actor. What's harder, playing yourself or playing a character?
Well, playing myself sometimes is hard just because they write things that aren't really me and put me in that as me. So trying to figure out a way to make me work in a context that makes their show work is sometimes challenging.
From the heart of Hollywood, it's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show with Patrick Labyorteaux.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Tonight's episode, Morgan Fairchild.
Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Okay, you know her from Friends, Days of Our Lives, Search for Tomorrow, General Hospital, Flamingo Road, Falcon Crest, and Pee-wee's Big Adventure. She went one-on-one with Robin Williams on Mork Mindy. Please welcome the legend, Morgan Fairchild.
Well, that's a very kind intro. Thank you. Thanks. Nice to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you. And again, I've only mentioned like a couple of your amazing credits here. I'm so excited to have you. I'm a big fan. We talked a little bit just minutes ago, before the show here. I'm really thrilled that you're here. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. You know, it's actors to actors. It's always fun.
Thank you. Now, when I was on Little House on the Prairie, and we shot over at Paramount, and of course, little kids for sure, but we were doing all the celebrity things. So I would always see you during the 70s at these big celebrity events. I don't think we ever had any interaction, but you've actually worked with a lot of people that I've worked with, Gary Marshall, the Mark Harmons, the Kirstie Alley's, like a lot of Robin Williams. And so it's like we never bumped into each other, but we were always kind of in the same area, literally.
It was
maybe
great
physically.
when there were just 3 channels, because we would all run into
Right?
each other all the time at affiliates and different galas and things. Yeah.
Act 1, beginnings. Okay, so at the beginning of all of this, you're just this girl in Texas. What draws you to acting? Why do you want to become an actor?
Well, I didn't. I actually wanted to be a doctor or a paleontologist. So, but I was one of those nerd kids. I'm a science nerd. So I was always in advanced placement classes when I was a kid. Teachers loved me because I was exceedingly shy. So I'd make straight A's and never open my mouth. But one year when I was 10, a teacher decided we had to make oral book reports. And I stood in front of the class for 3 days in a row and nothing would come out. I was exceedingly shy. And so my mother, whose brother was a judge and, and they were big debaters in college, decided no kid of hers was going to be that shy and incapacitatingly shy. So she enrolled my sister and me in drama classes to bring me out. And so my sister loved it. She would get excited every Saturday. I would throw up before we had to go. So I was terrified. And most of that first year, they had us do, the tintinnabulation of the bells and read things in front of class. And I was always terrified. But at the end of the year, they had us do a little play. And being the stodgy, little child that I was, they made me the adult in the play. And I kind of realized I kind of liked it, but I wouldn't admit that. But then one Saturday morning, my mother got up and she said, the Junior Players Guild are having auditions today. We should go. And my sister's saying, yes, I want to go. And I'm saying, no, 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 no. Well, the Junior Players Guild, I'm not sure if it's still there, but in Dallas when I was growing up, they did a wonderful children's theater and were a well-funded group and, did great children's theater. So we go over to this audition. And we're sitting in the back of the auditorium all day watching kids do improvisations, which is what they had us doing. And, you're looking at it thinking, God, I could do better than that, but I won't. I won't. And then finally my sister said, I want to audition. Well, I knew if I didn't go down and audition, I would get yelled at all the way home. So I always say I have a career today because my fear of the stage was second only to my fear of my mother. And so anyway, and this is the difference that an adult can make in a kid's life. That nice director gave my sister and me both little parts. But if I'd been turned down that first time, as shy as I was, I don't know if I'd have ever had the nerve to go back. But that an adult saw some potential in me, gave me a bit of hope. And then we just kept going to auditions and kept getting work, you know. So I started when I was 10, doing
Wow.
theater, grew up in the theater and always did theater. And so it wasn't until a bit later I started doing, and when I was a teenager, started doing a lot of commercials. They had a lot of runaway production in
Mhm.
Texas at that time. So I'd be doing, you know, kind of B grade movies and, you know, little parts and things that they needed people for. And then when I was 16, I got a call one night from a gentleman who he owned sound stages, and we shot a lot of commercials on his sound stages. And I'm walking out the door to open. A funny thing happens on the way to the forum. I'm 16. He calls and he says, "Hey, you want to be in a movie?" And I said, "Sure." You know, and he says, "Okay, we'll be at the North Park Inn tomorrow morning at 5 a.m." And I'm like, 5 a.m. I'm opening a show tonight. It's like I'm not going to get home till 5 a.m. You know, he says, "We'll be there." And I said, "Okay, okay, okay." So, and then just as we're getting off the phone, he says, "Oh, by the way, can you drive stick shift?" And of course, being an actor, I lied and said, "Of course." And then I got to the theater and said, "Guys, you can take me in the alley at intermission and teach me how to drive stick shift." so, so I show up in the dark. You know, it's like November in Texas. I show up in the dark the next morning at 5 a.m. in the motel parking lot, and they put us all on this bus and drive us out to the middle of nowhere, Texas, you know, like an hour and a half drive out of Dallas. And it's still dark. We get there. I don't know what to do. I've never been on a movie set before, really. And so I said to somebody, what do I do? And they said, "Well, why don't you go look at the set?" And I'm looking around at these, you know, flat fields with a few trees scattered here and there. And I said, "Where's the set?" You know, and I said, "Oh, it's down that road, you know." So I'm walking down this dirt road and dark with a little flashlight, thinking I'm insane. And I don't see any buildings. I don't see anything that looks like a set. And as the sun is starting to come up, I see this silhouette of a gentleman kind of slouched over like the old James Dean poster, kind of hands in the pocket, kind of
Mhm.
slouched over, head down, coming toward me. So I said, "Excuse me, sir, can you tell me where the set is?" And he looked up at me and he said, "Oh, well, I'll show you the set. And it's Warren Beatty, and the movie is Bonnie and Clyde." And
No,
so
that's awesome.
I'm like doing all of the stuff that Faye is not doing. A lot of driving scenes, and you know, anything that's too far away to see if it's Faye, it's probably me. Yeah. So that was my first big movie working on, and you know, that's when I kind of fell in love with movies too. I'd always thought theater, but you know, I didn't know if anybody would pay me to do keep doing that, you know, like as a living. So I still thought I was
Right.
going to go to med school. So
So you do Bonnie and Clyde, which is an incredible first first credit. Can you still see yourself in, like, you know, the shots they use? So like you're going, "That's me, that's me."
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I can tell it's me. Well, first of all, my hair is longer than Faye's, and it's a
Uh
slightly
huh.
different color, so it's easy to spot if you know what you're looking for. Like there's a real big shot that's a kind of a laugh in the movie where they're driving and they come toward an old truck with a lot of chicken coops on it, and they're having to swerve to miss the chicken coops, and it's shot from the back. And if you're obviously looking at the chicken coops to see if we're going to hit it, but if you look at the hair, you can see that it's longer and a different color than Face.
So also in my research, it says here that you were part of the when they were rounding up people to audition for the Last Picture Show. Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah, I actually thought I had the Last Picture Show. I'd actually been told by Bogdanovich that I had the part, and then he saw Sybil Shepherd on a magazine cover. And I lost
Oh
it.
no.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
you later, I mean, we'll jump forward, but later you were on Sybil, the Sybil Shepherd show for a number of episodes. Did you guys ever talk about that, or was that like
Oh,
just
I
in the
don't think
past?
she ever knew. I mean, I knew because I've auditioned for it and been told I had the part, but I don't think she ever knew.
Okay, so you're born Patsy Ann McClenny, right? And so you're in Texas. At what point do you become Morgan Fairchild, and how did that happen?
Well, you know, divorce is an amazing thing. So, I'd been working when I was a teenager under my maiden name. And then when I got married at 17, I started working under my married name. And then when I was getting divorced, I, you know, I never felt like a patsy. And I was going to change my name, and I was damned if I was going to work the rest of my life to put his name in lights. So I was going to change it to something. But as an actor, when you change things, that means you have to get all new headshots and resumes, everything printed up differently. You have to contact every producer you ever worked with or hope to work with again, and say, here's my new name and here's the new way to contact me. So I just decided, I am going to change it to something I want to be. And so I had fallen in love with the name Morgan from a movie called Morgan, A Suitable Case for Treatment, a Carol Rye's movie in 1966 that Vanessa Redgrave got her first Academy Award nomination for. And David Warner played Morgan, this man who lives in his fantasies and thinks he's a gorilla. And at that point in Texas, I was living in my fantasies a lot, and I just loved the name Morgan. And I thought, it's a guy's name, but I liked it, so I picked it. And then one of my friends, we were sitting at a pizza parlor, at Gordo's Pizza Parlor near SMU. And one of my friends was, you're trying to come up with a good fake name, okay? It's like you want something that sounds, something that stands out a bit but doesn't sound like a stripper. And so, and so she said, well, what about Fairchild? I like it with Morgan. And, it's not so weird that you freak out. And yet I've never actually met anybody named Fairchild. So it's not that common. So as soon as I heard Morgan Fairchild, I knew that's who I was. That became instantly the pick. So, and the funny thing is, the first job I worked as Morgan Fairchild, I had 3 people come up to me and say, oh, yeah, I've heard of you. Because it just sounds like somebody you've heard of. It's like,
what's amazing about your name and your persona is they match perfectly. I mean, I'm not telling you something you don't already know. Morgan Fairchild, like you just said, it's a unique name. You present as a unique visual. I mean, you're gorgeous, and the character. Because when you're casting shows, you want to cast so that there's a shorthand. So it's like, oh, yeah, she's the upper crust society lady, or it's like whatever you're and you play that so well, and Morgan Fairchild works so well. So my question to you is: this before you came out to Hollywood, or is this part of when you're still in Texas?
No, this was when I was still in Texas. When I was deciding what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I got married at 17, divorced at 23. Most of my friends were just getting out of college, and I was now a divorcee who'd been supporting a husband and his mother for several years. And, what am I going to do? And so my sister was going to Juilliard in New York, and I thought I would go up to New York and try my hand there. And, I figured I could always, I worked a lot in Texas in theater and different things, commercials and all kinds of stuff. So I figured I can always come back if I don't make it in New York. So I went up to New York and couldn't get an agent, couldn't get in a door. Everybody would say, oh, back in New York back then, I don't know if you can still do it now, they would have open calls. So you'd go and you'd wait for hours for your 2-minute audition. And I would go and wait 5 or 6 hours and get in there, and casting would say, oh, we want real people. You're too elegant. You're too porcelain. You're too glamorous. They wouldn't even let you read. And so, finally I said to one of them, what do I have to do? Break my nose to get an audition? I mean, it's like, so it was hard. It was hard because I couldn't get an agent, but I was still doing a lot of theater and a lot of dinner theater back in those days. You'd go out and do a little tour of a circuit or something. And so I could do that. But at one point I sort of decided, if I'm going to say I'm a New York actor, I got to stay in town and try to really get an acting job. And so at that point, trying to stay in town, my sister and I were living together in an apartment, and she's going to school. And I thought, back in Dallas, I was doing a lot of commercials. And, I'm too short to be a model, but I did a lot of glamour stuff, hair, makeup, skincare, hand and foot modeling, And so I thought, well, I'll just try my hand. Like I was in the Neiman Marcus catalogs and all that stuff. So I thought, well,
Lots of this stuff where your hands are in your face. You're
oh
together.
yes. So I thought, well, so I got my nerve together and I went over to Eileen Ford, which of course was the huge, big,
Yeah.
famous model agency at the time. So I'm sitting out in the lobby, waiting to go in and see Miss Ford, and this gentleman walks by, very elegant, 50-ish gentleman with a little touch of silver to his hair, and he stops and looks at me with my little portfolio, and he says, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I said, I know I'm too short." And he says, "Yeah, you're too short." He says, "But what are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm, waiting to see Eileen Ford." And he said, "Well, I'm, come in my office. I'll talk to you." So I go in and talk to him, and Gene Barakat, and he talked to me for a bit, and he said, "Well, I'll tell you something." He said, I'm the head of the commercial division. We've just created a commercial division. We're trying to branch out. And you're an actress. You can talk. I said, "Yeah." And he said, "We don't have many of those." He says, "Our girls can't talk, They're models, they're not actresses. So I'd love to send you out on some commercial auditions, So, and then so I got into Eileen Ford via the commercial division. And then one day he called up and he said, "Okay," he said, "this is another thing we've been trying to break into, these soap operas, the daytime soap operas. I've got an audition for, they want somebody who can talk to go over for like 3 episodes on Search for Tomorrow." And I said, "Okay," so I go over. I thought I gave a good reading, but I didn't get the part. 2 days later, he called me back and he said, "Well, you didn't get that part, but they loved you. And they have had somebody who's been on the show in a new part just for 6 weeks, and they're not happy with her, and they want you to replace her." So that's how I suddenly I had a daytime soap with no acting agent. And, and Susan Lucci and I were kind of the early bitch goddesses of daytime. and so, and so that's how I got on the soap, but I still didn't have an acting agent. And so at one point I kept getting turned down again. "You're too porcelain, you're too glamorous, you're too elegant, blah, blah, blah." So at one point I met a nice young man who had a hole in the wall agency, and he said, "Well, I'd like to represent you." So he was kind of representing me, and then he went over to work for Stark Hesseltine, who was a big, big, big agent, represented Neil Simon and Robert Redford, and put together Barefoot on the Park and all this stuff in New York, who'd already turned me down several times. Anyway, he went to work for Stark, and he said, "I'd really like to work with this girl. Can I just bring her in and be under my wing?" And so suddenly I had an acting agent. And so I started going out, and then he also represented Christopher Reeve. And Chris was doing one of the daytime soaps with me at CBS. We were all at CBS on West 57th. So I knew Chris from, we were all on the same floor. We'd see each other all the time. So because now we had the same agent, they would send us out together to audition and stuff. And so, I remember when Chris got Superman, then he called me from London, and he says, "Oh, you won't believe they're really bulking me up." And I'm like, "Really?" Because Chris was like Abe Lincoln. He was very tall, like 6'4", but very lanky, so I couldn't imagine him as Superman, but I thought they'd put a fake suit on him, but I don't know what they were doing. But anyway, but he, suddenly he was doing great. And then eventually I decided I would move to LA. I started realizing that if I stayed in New York, I'd be doing soaps the rest of my life. And by that time I was doing a ton of national commercials. And if I stayed in New York, I would be doing soaps and national commercials the rest of my life. So I'd gotten a Kojak and everything, but really, if they came to New York to shoot, they wanted street people and New York types and Italian mamas and Puerto Rican guys, and they didn't want waspy blondes. If they wanted a waspy blonde, they cast it in LA. So I thought, I'll keep my apartment in New York. I'll try LA and just see if I can get a job out there. So now I'm going to have to go get another agent. Well, it just so happened that just when I was moving out here, Richard Dickens, another New York agent who'd turned me down several times, merged with Stark Hesseltine and came out to open the LA office. So suddenly he got me by default, also did not want me. But at the Christmas party after the first year or two, I remember he got a little drunk and came over to me and said, I didn't want you. I said, I know, Richard. He says, now you and Polly Holiday, he said, I got all these Broadway people, but you and Polly Holiday worked, and Polly Holiday was on Alice, so she had a
Yeah.
series. He says, you and Polly Holiday are keeping this agency going in LA because you work all the time. I would never have predicted it. I said, I know you didn't want me, but I'm keeping you afloat.
We'll be back after these messages. Have you ever thought about becoming an actor and making your friends and family jealous? Well, have I got a deal for you. Here at Working Actors School, we offer many different classes so you can become a famous actor like me. And we have a delightful selection of classes, including Adult Weekly. It's every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Here you will learn how to be an actor with other adults. How do we do it? How is it possible? Is it a miracle? Yes, it is. It's a miracle called Zoom. We teach everything online so you can become a famous actor and impress your friends and family. So if you want to be a famous actor and make your friends and family jealous, then you need to sign up at Working Actors School. You can get a hold of us at workingactorschool.com. You can sign up for classes at workingactorschool.com. You can make a reservation for the class online at workingactorschool.com. So come check us out. It's workingactorschool.com. Act 2. Success. Take a break because this is going to take just 1 minute, okay? Listen to this, guys. You're not going to be able to this freaks me out. You had this huge run of TV shows. You have, Kojak, The Bob Newhart Show, Policewoman, Dallas, Love Boat, Magnum P.I., Hotel, My Two Dads, Murphy Brown, Roseanne, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, Murder, She Wrote, Empty Nest, Diagnosis Murder, Sybil, Touched by an Angel, Home Improvement, Seventh Heaven, Roswell, That 70s Show, That 80s Show, Just Shoot Me, 2.5 Men, My Name is Earl, Chuck, Bones, Happily Divorced, Hot in Cleveland, The Simpsons, not to mention the series that you did, Fashion House, Falcon Crest, Paper Dolls, Flamingo Road, or the soaps, like you mentioned, Search for Tomorrow, General Hospital, Days of Our Lives, The Bold and the Beautiful, The City. It's an insane amount of credits, Morgan. And what is so amazing, and we were kind of talking about this before, and I want to talk to you just as a general idea here. You've created Morgan Fairchild. A very intentional idea of like, okay, I want a new name. I want to feel like this person. Do you ever, and I don't want to, it's not like a psychological thing. I'm just saying it from an actor's point of view. Do you ever think of Morgan Fairchild as a character? And if you do, like, how do you see her as that, if you do?
No, Morgan Fairchild was who I always was. It's like when I moved to New York, they also wanted me to not have blonde hair and grow my hair in brown and cut it off. And, everybody always wants you to be something that they see you as. I had a very specific vision of what I saw me as, with the name, with the look. When I was the, bookworm kid and had big, thick Coke bottle-bottom glasses, for which, I would have no career if they hadn't invented contacts, so, because I can't see anything. But, once I got contact lenses and I decided I was going to grow my hair in and start coloring it a little bit, because back then I really was pretty much a natural blonde, but I started lightening it a bit and I wanted long blonde hair. And that's who I was. And I started designing my eye makeup, which I've done some version of my entire career. And I usually do my own makeup on sets because I create Morgan Fairchild. I created the look. And I've done big editorial things, like even Old Navy things where they were bringing very expensive people and they'd say, okay, show me again how to do that eye. Show me again how to do that eye. Because if I let them just do me, I look very boring, and so, because I'm so white, I have white eyelashes and white eyebrows, and I like
Right.
white, so I'm very boring without the makeup. And I created this look when I was 14. I created the Morgan Fairchild look, and I've stuck with it for all these years. And so when you say, is it intentional? Yes, it's intentional of who I wanted to be, who I saw myself as. That's who I became. I created Morgan Fairchild.
Yeah, of course you are Morgan Fairchild, but you literally have personified the internal version of what you wanted to be, the physical manifestation of this idea. And from what I'm hearing, all of these, like, people look at a person like yourself who's gorgeous and talented, and they think, oh, everything was handed to her. But just in the couple of minutes you've been talking, it sounds like literally everything has been a fight for
everything
you to
was a fight.
create
It was
this.
always a fight. I mean, because I was so shy, like even when I was a kid, they'd say, "Oh, well, we'll do Alice in Wonderland if my sister was available and Morgan can audition to be in the chorus." It's like, so it was always a fight. And even when I was in New York, when I started going out for commercials, because by then I had the soap, but I was going out for commercials and. In New York, you go out after work, you'd lug your portfolio, and here in LA, you just get in your car and you drive over. But in New York,
Yeah.
rain, sleet, snow, heat, whatever, you're lugging it, you're walking, you're on a hot subway or whatever. So it's work to get out and go to those auditions. And I would go, and my sister tells the story to her acting class. She says, I came in one day and, kind of bedraggled. And she said, you never get them. You go for the same product to the same people all the time and you never get one. Why do you bother to go? And I said, because if I don't go, I have said no to myself. And I will never say no to myself. I will show up and I will make them say no to me. And because if I don't show up, I'm never going to get it. Well, I don't know if I got better or I wore them down or what, but after a while, I was doing like a national commercial a week. I was like working like crazy, but the initial thing was no, 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 no. And again, you're going for the same products with the same advertising agency, seeing the same people. They're sick of seeing you, and you're kind of sick of dragging over there in the rain or the snow.
Well, when you look back on it, right now, obviously, I keep saying the name. It's like one name, Morgan Fairchild. You're Morgan Fairchild. Everyone knows who that is. But in the 70s, because I was there and I saw it, my brother and I worked I have a brother who's also an actor. He and I were both on Little House. It was a very bifurcated business. New York was, my sister says they're angry and chapped in New York, and out here in California they're angry and chapped. They're like everything is chapped. They're just angry and chapped, but they're very ethnic, like you were saying. They're very dark, brown eyes, dark hair. And here you walk in as from Texas, but like as the California dream girl, basically, because you personified that along with maybe one or two other women that kind of created that visual. And so you're fighting all of this. Plus, your sister's the one at Juilliard. And I have a brother, and like I just said, we were actors. There's always a sibling rivalry. There's always that competition that, it's not like, like a soap opera in itself. It's not like that, but there's always that familial kind of like you want to.
I never felt that with her. I don't know if she felt that with me, but I never felt that with her. I always felt we were a team, because I'm only a year and a half older. And so, we did a lot of shows together. So I always saw us as a team, and I saw her as very talented. So I was thrilled when she got a full scholarship to Juilliard, and I was married and, saying, did I make a decision here that was a good decision? But,
Spoiler alert.
But I never resented it. And I never felt like, a rivalry with her. I just always felt we were a team as sisters going out there together. We just kind of went on slightly different paths.
Well, then what was driving you to, because what you just said about, going in there, they have to turn it down. They have to turn me down personally. That's an insane amount of drive to accomplish what you've accomplished. Is that just basically always been a part of you? Or was there an event? Or was there something that happened in your life that you said, maybe was it this marriage that you said, okay, that was a good, in the moment, maybe a good call, but I want to change my life and kind of take off in a different direction? What caused all of this?
Well, like I said, I was so shy and I kind of lived in all the books. I'm a voracious reader. And my sister remembers, and I remember very well, because I was always reading all these, I love biographies and autobiographies. And I came into her one day, she tells this to her class too, and I just announced that I wanted my life to be a great adventure. I didn't want it to be, I wanted to be somebody people would want to write those books about. I didn't want to live my life looking at other people having interesting lives. I wanted my life to be a great adventure. And I set out to do that. And so, as shy as I was, it was very hard for me to put myself forward. But and a lot of people told me when, from Dallas, when I moved to New York, knowing me as a shy person in Dallas, said, I thought New York would chew you up and spit you out. And what they didn't count on is that under the shyness and under the blonde hair, there's just a backbone of steel. I'm just,
Yeah.
original frontier Texas bitch underneath it all. I will keep going, and I will try to find a way. And a lot of it is, again, I I think in life I see a lot of people who let themselves be cornered or boxed in by the fear of somebody saying no. And my attitude is always, all they can say is no. I'm going to
Right.
make them say no. I'm going to show up, and if they don't like it, fine, but I'm going to make them say no. As opposed to, oh my God, they might say no. It's like,
Well, this kind of it lines up with your career because your Morgan Fairchild career is you are an actor, but you've played yourself, like I said, 9 times, where I can't think of another type of actor, not a personality, not someone who's famous for being famous, but like a real life actor who knows their chops and has jobs and creates characters, who's played themselves as many times. And then each of your characters that you've played, while they're wildly different people, it's sort of like you said, like every single thing is like you've made happen against all the odds, even because I know how it is in Hollywood. You'll get success in Hollywood, and then when that week is over, then you start at the bottom again, and you got to start climbing that ladder again. Even when people think you're, famous, it's like, oh no, they didn't want me for that job because I'm too famous. It's like all of this stuff that you created. I'm sorry, I'm just going on because I'm fascinated that it's like how hard. I mean, you've consistently worked for so long. It's not a coincidence. That's because you never stopped. It's not like you hit the gold mine and got a TV job and then sort of just like stood back. It's like you've always been working.
in this business, you can never stand back. It's
Right?
like, yeah, I mean, and I've always had an idea that every 5 years you have to reintroduce yourself to a new generation. And so, like, that's why I took the job on Friends. And I would always take jobs. I like taking iconoclastic jobs where people don't expect to see you.
Right.
Um, playing nuns in Bosnia, whatever. I mean, I like doing things that people don't expect. And so I know when they offered me Friends, the show was not a big hit yet. It was kind of muddling
Uh-huh.
along. But I'd seen it a few times and I liked it, and I thought the cast was good, and I thought they were good individually, but you're an actor, you know what I mean. They're good individually, but the ensemble work is also very good. That's two different things. So I said sure, and I remember Cicely Tyson saying to me, "You're too young to be that guy's mother. You should turn that down." And I said, "Well, you got to make that transition at some point." I've always been very practical about my career. And so I said yes, same as I said yes to some of the other guest shots you mentioned. And then the first day on the set, Matthew Perry came running over to me, bounding over like a big puppy dog, as he was wont to do. And he said, "Oh, you won't remember me, but I used to hang out with you on the set of Flamingo Road and Falcon Crest with my dad." And I said, "Who's your dad?" He said, "John Bennett Perry, who had a recurring part on Flamingo Road and Falcon Crest as a sheriff." And I'm like, "Oh my God, you were that little kid?" And it's like, and then I guess I am old enough to be this guy's mother. So, but you that's one reason I took it. I knew it was aimed at young people, and so I do think you have to introduce yourself, to a different audience. So even now, you have the older people come up, "Oh, I loved you on Falcon Crest. Oh, I loved you on this." And some people, "Oh, I loved you on the old Navy ads," and some people come, "I love you on Friends," but it's all the generations.
Right.
So,
It's funny you mentioned John Bennett Perry. I did a TV show for a number of years called JAG. It was a military law show, and he came on the show, and we worked together. and my wife was pregnant at the time, and so our son's middle name is Bennett because of John Bennett Ferry, because we loved that name. And,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just like the people that you end up working with and having these connections with. I want to get back to Friends, but I want to go through some of this because it's like we can't talk about everything because, oh my God, it would take forever. But you worked on Happy Days with Gary Marshall and all of these guys. You're talking about this generational thing. The whole area of Happy Days and Mork and Mindy, these were huge shows. Like you said, only 3 channels, and they were massive shows, and you were part of both of them. I remember that era. In fact, I'll probably cut this out, but just so you're aware, my wife and I created a show for Nickelodeon called See Dad Run, which we shot on Stage 19, which is where you guys shot Happy Days. And when we were shooting Little House on the Prairie, they were shooting Happy Days, and Mork and Mindy was across the street from us. So we would go over, the kids, and watch Robin, rehearse. And this was like for the pilot. And it was just an insane kind of amount of talent just to watch him do his thing. But there was like this whole family group over at Paramount. Can
It
you
was
talk a
great.
little bit about Happy Days and Mork and Mindy? Because it's just, you went one-on-one with Robin Williams. That's insane.
Well, part of the reason I could is because we started in the theater so young. And one of our mentors, my sisters and my at our theater as children and adolescents, was one of the great improvisers of all time. And back in the day when people would say, who are the best people you've ever worked with? And I'll say I worked with 2 geniuses, Robin Williams and Larry O'Dwyer. And you never heard of Larry O'Dwyer, but he's every bit as good as Robin Williams. And having worked with Larry doing shows that ran, where you would watch him every night and watch what he did and improvise and be out there on the set with him and improvise, trained me to be able to work with Robin. But Paramount was very much kind of family back then. So I remember maybe one of my early jobs, maybe 3rd or 4th job when I got to LA, was Happy Days, which of course in like 1977 to be Fonzie's new girlfriend on Happy Days was like the epitome of hipdom.
Right.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
but what a wonderful cast. Everybody over there was so great. And Henry was so great. And so whenever I was on the Paramount lot to work or to audition for something, I would stop by and say hi because that whole cast was just so lovely. So one day I stopped by to say hi, and Henry says, "Do you have to be anywhere?" And I said, "No." He says, "Stay and watch our guest star work." And I said, "Oh, okay." He said, "This guy's great." So I stayed all afternoon so that I could tell that guest star that he was a genius. So, like, cut to 9 months later, William Morris calls, and we got good news and bad news. So what's the good news? Well, you got the TV movie you wanted, blah blah blah. I said, okay, what's the bad news? And they said, oh, Gary Marshall has this new series, and it's all under wraps, and nobody knows anything about it. It's a big secret, and he wants you to do it, but he doesn't want to give you a contract, and he only wants to pay you top of show, and you're making so much more money than that now. We just think you should turn it down. And I said, what's it called? And he said, Mork and Mindy. And I said, that's Robin Williams' show. And he said, who's Robin Williams? There was a day. Who's Robin Williams? I said, God, don't kill Gary. I'd work for free to work with Robin Williams. Yes, I want to take it. So I'm working for scale at a place when I'm way past making that amount of money with no contract, just as a recurring, but no contract even for a recurring. And so the first day I came in, the show was not on the air yet. And so the first day, I went to watch the taping of the previous show before me so I could see what the character relations were. And I could see Robin like at the commissary table on the dinner break, with all of his Topanga Canyon, purple mohawk shaved, pierced everything in 1978. It's like looking at me like, oh, what did they send us, Miss White Bread America here? And so, but anyway, the next day we get up and we do our table read, which for those who aren't actors, you sit around a table and literally read the script. It's just to see where the jokes are and stuff. And then we get up to start blocking. And blocking is where you arrange where all the cameras are going to be, who's going to sit, who's going to stand, who's going to cross here, and make sure you're not blocking any of the 3 cameras on a sitcom. Anyway, I quickly saw that what would happen is Robin would start up with the script, and then Robin would go off the script, and Robin would just go. And everybody would just stand back and watch Robin go. And so but nobody, yeah, and then Howie Storm, the director, I mean, when Robin would start running out of material, which Robin would never admit he's running out of material, Howard would say, oh, okay, let's get back to the script. So anyway, so I got up to do our first scene, and we started with the script, and then Robin did something, and I did something, and he looked at me, and he did something, and I did something, and he, boom, 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 and he comes over and he grabs me and throws me, and he says, "Mama, you're one of me." And we would just improvise all over the place. So a lot of that, if you do Best of Mork and Mindy, that first year, a lot of the stuff is stuff we improvised, just together. And it was great fun. But I remember, my sister knew Robin and Chris because they were the class behind her at Juilliard. And so before
Okay.
Robin got thrown out of Juilliard for being Robin. And so,
What do they know?
he would sit on our living room floor, over in Westwood and say, "Nobody's going to get this show. Nobody's going to get this show." Robin, I'd say, "Robin, everybody's going to love this. You're a genius. Everybody's going to love this. And then you're going to have to really watch out for fame, what fame happens to you."
Yeah.
But he was convinced nobody was going to get it and it was not going to work, so lo and behold, it did. And what a kind, sometimes people ask me, what was he really like? Kindest, most generous hearted, sweetest, nicest guy. Every good thing you ever thought about Robin Williams was true.
What was it like to honestly, actor to actor, work with Robin?
Robin was so quick that he was so smart and he was so quick. And it's almost intuitive. When you're working with somebody improvising like that, it's just almost intuitive. You just are in sync that you can see where he's going to go. And, in your mind, like for that flash second, you're trying to come up with an answer for where you think he's going to go. And he may not go there, but,
Right.
but you're just always, you're just bouncing with him. It's like dribbling a ball, you're just bouncing with him and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And he loved that. Until they got Johnathan on the show, apparently I was the only one that would kind of back and forth improvise with him like that. Because,
Yeah.
he idolized Johnathan. And so
Yeah.
at one day Robin was getting very late coming to the set a lot. And
He was slowed down by all the prairie kids.
yeah, well, and so one day they had gotten Johnathan Winters, because he idolized Johnathan, to hide in his dressing room. I guess it's trailer. And so anyway, Robin finally shows up on the set, and everybody's trying to get him to go to his trailer. And he won't go out to his trailer. He's like, "Oh, I'm late. I'm going to do the, and no, oh, just go to your trailer. Just, we left something out there for you." And Jonathan's hiding in the closet to just bring out his Johnathan fell asleep in the closet waiting for Robin to finally come to the dressing room.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so again, like you've got so many things here, but I got to mention Dream Merchants and Flamingo Road. I did a couple of projects with Mark Herman. You worked with him on both of those things. What was your experience? How did you get along with Mark?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Also, North and South was a huge television event. They kind of do those events now on like HBO and stuff, but this was a really big deal. How was your experience for North and South?
Oh my
books
God,
one and
it was
books two.
fabulous. It was fabulous because at that time, it was such a huge, the books had been huge bestsellers. And so there was this waiting audience and the Civil War and the whole thing and the casting. And I mean, it took us 2-3 years to shoot the damn thing. So, and I had this part that was in and out. So I would be
Okay.
suddenly flying off, on my hiatus, they'd wait till I finished shooting something and fly me to wherever, and I'd shoot my bits and go in. But I remember one time we were going to shoot in Charleston, and so I flew out on David Walper's jet and with Elizabeth Taylor and Hal Holbrook, who's going to be playing Lincoln, and Dick Smith, his Academy Award winning, I think,
Makeup guy.
guy,
Yeah.
who turns him into
Yeah.
Abe Lincoln and Mark Twain and whatever. And so we're all on this plane going to Charleston, and
Just on a private jet with Elizabeth Taylor, just a regular day at work.
yeah, and and David Walper, his jet, and he
Mega
was the
producer.
producer. But getting to Charleston and getting into all the gear, and they'd put dirt down on the roads, which I think drove the people in Charleston nuts. But put dirt down, and I remember I came down in my full, 1860 something regalia, and Hal came out as Lincoln. And then looking down there, and I mean, you really felt like you were back in time. It was one of those magical experiences. And then Phil
Wow.
Kasnoff, who played my cohort on there, I'm his girlfriend on the show. We would go off and Charleston is so gorgeous. We were there, I think in the spring because all the azaleas were blooming, and we would go. They had the homes, the historic homes kind of open for tours. And so we would go to all the historic homes and take pictures with the azaleas and all that, living the life, as it were. But I just remember that magic day of walking out there with Hal as Lincoln and looking down that street with, I mean, you really felt like you were there, back in time.
Wow. That's amazing. You have all of these big, huge, different experiences in this business, things that you'd never have a chance to do, outside of that. Again, your resume is ridiculous, Morgan. I'm so impressed.
Well, you're very kind to keep saying that. I mean, I just like to work. I just keep working.
Yeah, but so many people don't get that. So many people think that once they get their big job, that it's just going to roll in, and all I got to do is say yes or no. And it doesn't. It's not like that. When I look at your resume, I see someone like, look, you're kind enough to be here, and not only were you on, you're on time. You're a total pro for even a show like this, which is like nothing.
Well, you're lovely. Why would you say that?
I would
Don't
say it
do that.
for
Don't do that to
no.
yourself.
I think I love this show. I think it's a great show. But North and South Falcon Crest, friends, it's on the level of where you should be professionally. It's like this is a favor that you're doing for me, but yet you're giving me all the same respect and regards as you would any other job, which tells me a lot about your character.
Patrick, you are a fellow actor. You have survived in this business. You are worthy of every drop of respect and teamwork. That's always been, I grew up in the theater. That's always been the way it is. We are a team. We are all in this together. And that's kind of my life philosophy too, is we're here on earth to help each other get through life. But just know that you're a very kind person, and you've obviously survived in this business like I have. We've all survived,
Yeah.
which is always amazing. And every bit of respect to you too.
Well, I'm blushing, and I'm overwhelmed with you. The beauty of what you just said is absolutely real, because it is true. And like you said, from a theater point of view. We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, I'm Patrick Labyorteaux, and I've been an actor since I was a little kid. So I know what it's like to be a little kid actor. So I have a class here called Youth Weekly, and that meets every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. And it is an awesome class if you are young and want to learn all about acting. We have a great set of kids, and it's taught on Zoom, so you can do it from anywhere. You can do it on your phone, you can do it on your laptop, on an iPad. It's awesome. I've had kids take a class while they were in the car coming back from soccer practice. I swear to you. So if acting is in your blood, come to workingactorschool.com and check out the Youth Weekly class every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. I'll see you there. Act 3, present day. Like, you've got a real eye for, like, you called out Robin Williams. You called out Pee-wee. You did Pee-wee.
Called out who?
Pee-wee Herman. Paul Rubens. But like Paul Rubens, like, you did this as a favor because you know Paul.
Well, I met Paul. Hosting Night at the Improv. And in the afternoon, everybody came in to rehearse, Shecky Green and all the older comedians. And at the end, this guy comes in, younger guy, and just says, I'm not going to run through my act, but I just wanted to come and let you know, whatever happens, I won't hurt you. And I'm like, okay, okay. So that night he comes out as Pee-wee, who I'd never seen before, and is throwing, has a paper bag of spiders and snakes and is throwing things at me. And again, I'm improvising with him. And so we became great friends. He came over after, he says, you're the only one who gets me. You're the only one you just went with it. Everybody freaks out. You just went with it. So we became great friends. So then one day I get a phone call. And this is back when I still had an answering service. We have Mr. Pee Wee Herman on the line, and I said, okay. I got on the line. I said, Paul, I know your real name. He said, well, I got a favor. And I said, yeah. And he says, well, I've got my first movie. I said, great. And he said, but we don't have any money. We're on a shoestring budget, and we need some celebrity cameos, and everybody's turned us down. And I said, okay. Don't tell everybody that everyone's already turned you down. And he said, I said, I heard about no money. Okay. I said, when do you need me? And he said, Thursday. And so I said, let me call Falcon Crest. So, I think I had one scene that day, so they rearranged it. So I got Thursday off. So I show up on the back lot at Warner Brothers. They had borrowed the back lot at Warner Brothers. So I arrive, and they are doing a ninja fight. So I took Paul and Tim, it was Tim Burton's first movie, took them aside and said, hey guys, 4.5 years of Kung Fu in Chinatown in New York, I can do this ninja fight for you. But, but not falling out of a tree or anything, because if I break a leg, Falcon Crest will sue me. So we do the ninja fight, and then Jim Brolin shows up as Pee-wee. Neither of us have sides or a script. We have no idea what's going on. And so they said, oh, just look at each other and say, I know you are, but what am I? And so Jim and I look at it, I said, what does it mean? They said, it'll be funny in context. Doesn't matter. It'll be funny in context, And I had done the pilot of Hotel with Jim a year or two before that, So I knew Jim a little bit. So we look at each other and do our, I know you are, but what am I? And then they said, okay, thank you, And so I looked at Jim and I said, do you have to work today? And he said, no, I got the day off. I said, I got the day off too. You want to do more? And he said, okay, sure. What do we do? I said, I don't know. Let's go over and talk to the guys. So I go over to Tim and Paul and say, hey, you got us for the day. You want to do something else? And so, again, improvising everything. And so Tim says, well, we only have the back lot. What else can we do here? And so Jim says, let me make a phone call. So he calls Aaron Spelling and gets us the Hotel Fairmont lobby set for the day. They weren't shooting on it, and it's on the Warner Brothers lot. So Aaron loans us the Fairmont lobby. So then, Jim becomes a big game hunter, and I'm a spy, and Paul becomes the bellboy and, does the paging Mr. Herman. And like that whole scene is totally improvised.
You are such a pushover.
I know you are. But what am I?
I can't, because, idiot bitch says, hey, you got us for the day. You want to do something else?
I'll say this, though. I think the connection for you with comedy, because I came up to you at a convention not too long ago, and I kind of was gushing over your comedic chops. And part of your comedic chops, I think, and the fact that you're able to go toe-to-toe with Paul Rubens or Robin Williams, is you're very intelligent. And it's the intelligence that understands, because I think comedians have to be smart, because they have to understand what's going on in order to make fun of it. To be funny, you need to know what the joke is. You can't miss it. And your higher intelligence allows you to interact with these people in that, like you were saying with Robin, that split second type of way. And also your internal motor that keeps things going. Anybody else I know, it's like, oh, easy day out. I'm out by 12 o'clock. I'm going to go home. But you're like, hey, let's work, which it's inspiring. Before we get into the questions, I got to talk a little bit more about Friends. The reason being is that obviously, like you said, you started off early on before the show became something, but then of course it became everything. And you already mentioned this, but I was going to have it in my notes. It's like, it seems like you reinvent yourself, and you actually do. So what was that experience like with you for Friends? Because by the end of it, by the time you do the wedding episode, it's a huge, event everywhere in the world. How was that experience for you?
It was interesting because, like I said, when I first went on it, it was not a big hit, and I was the first big guest star, I guess, and they promoted it very heavily on me. And the two Matthews came up to me in the Blockbuster there on Laurel Canyon that used to be there on a lunch break, I guess. And they came up, did a Morgan sandwich, and jumped in the air and said, "You got us in the top five. You got us in the top five." And and it was always fun working over there. They always gave us great scripts. As you know, a lot of times when you're the guest star, they don't give you the good lines. They always give the star the good lines, and you're
Right.
the fall guy, which I can also do. But they would always give us good lines, which, when you're the guest star, you're always grateful to be treated like your full cast and stuff. So it was always fun, always nice. It was interesting kind of watching it change, from when I first went on and it was like a middling hit to when suddenly every suit and every executive wants to be in the bleachers for every rehearsal, and and the kids are getting like pulled at in every direction and stuff. You try to be there for people and talk them through it, but it was always fun. The wedding was great fun.
You have my favorite line of that whole show.
My favorite line of my career, probably.
Is it? Oh, don't you have too much penis for that dress?
I was shocked they left it in. I assumed the censors would make them take it out, but I was shocked they left it in.
Aren't you a little old to be wearing a dress like that?
Don't you have a little too much penis to be wearing a dress like that?
So, but they would give us great lines.
We'll be back after these messages. Hey, I'm Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV, and I've been doing this for a long, long time. And I know what it's like if you are in a class with people, and sometimes you just want to have that one-on-one connection with the person that you're working with to go over, I don't know, a particular scene, or maybe you have an audition, or maybe you just want the privacy to try stuff that you don't really know is going to work and not have anyone look at you. Well, I have the perfect solution for you. It's called One-on-One with Patrick Labyorteaux. You can book your time at workingactorschool.com, and it's just me and you for an hour going over whatever it is you want to work on, breaking down the script, talking about character, figuring out your intention, the spine of the scene, everything that goes in to making a dynamite performance. So if you're interested in acting and want that one-on-one personal attention, check out One-on-One with Patrick Labyorteaux. You can find all the information you need at workingactorschool.com. Act 4, questions. We're going to go into the questions now. These are just straight up questions. These are the questions that my wife came up with. It's called Tina's Gotta Know. Tina's my wife. The first question is called That's SheauxBiz. What is the most Hollywood moment in your life?
Well, there have been a few. Let's see. Probably when I was doing Flamingo Road and we'd been picked up for the third year, and John Beck had bought a house with a wife and 4 kids, and I'd bought my first house based on the fact that we're picked up. I'm in the limo on the way to the airport to go to New York to do PR for the new season, which starts shooting in 2 weeks. There'd been a change of head at the network. I get a phone call from Entertainment Tonight. How does it feel to have the show canceled?
Oh, man.
That's Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we were a big hit for NBC. Well, I mean, it caught us totally off guard. We'd already been picked up. We were ready to start shooting. So,
what was the transition? Was it from Brandon to the other guy, or who was the guy coming in? Silverman?
Grant Tinker.
Grant Tinker. Okay. Yeah. Okay. SheauxBiz Part 2. What's the most embarrassing Hollywood moment in your life?
I'm sure there are. I just can't think of one right now.
Sure. Okay, Sheaux Me The Money, number 3. What was your biggest missed financial opportunity? Hollywood, you always get a lot of inside knowledge or opportunities. Sometimes you just don't. You miss them. Do you have a big missed financial opportunity?
Well, I created a character on Dallas, and after Flamingo Road got canceled, they wanted me to come back and do the Jenna Wade character again. And after I'd done the hotel pilot, Aaron Spelling wanted to develop a series for me. But at that point, I was in partnership. I had a partner, and we were going to produce our own series, and we were working on our own pilot, and that didn't pan out. So either one of those would have been a good deal. But being the loyal idiot that I am, I stayed with my partners and didn't let them down and didn't abandon them, and paid the price for it. But did the right thing.
Yeah, but
by
also,
them.
I mean, it's consistent with you were betting on yourself, because it's like
Yeah.
you were in the idea of like, look, Aaron Spelling's making a ton of money on me. This guy's making a ton of money on me over at Dallas. Why can't I make the ton of money? I get it.
Well,
That makes sense.
at that point, Dallas had already been on like 7, 8 years or something. And, usually that's about the length the show stays on there. If I'd known it was going to stay on that much longer, maybe I would have done it.
Okay, Show and Tell, number 4. As a teenager, who was your idol? Who did you look up to at that time?
Well, I don't know how you mean look up to. I mean, all kinds of different people. One of the major things that helped me get out of Dallas was Rudolf Nureyev. And Rudolf Nureyev, for
dancer.
those who aren't ballet nuts, was the premier ballet dancer of the late 20th century, and gorgeous. And when I was 16, I not only went to see a movie called Morgan, A Suitable Case for Treatment, I went to see Romeo and Juliet with Rudolf Nureyev and Margot Fonteyn. And growing up in an area where football and cheerleaders were all that seemed to matter, it gave me hope that there was something so beautiful that I could aspire to, that I could get out and go to that. And I didn't have to deal with football. And I didn't want to be a cheerleader. And I didn't fit in very well with my milieu. And that gave me hope. So Nureyev was always a great inspiration to me. For people who don't know, I mean, it was a Russian defector in 1961. He defected from Russia. He was one of the early defectors, and it was like a huge deal. And he was the premier ballet dancer all over the world. Everyone wanted him. He was like a god. And he was like a god to me. So I used to, when I lived
He's
in
also
New York,
very good looking.
well, he was gorgeous, but the feral quality, sometimes, and this is just for acting students, people will say, like, what do you, who do you aspire to on stage? And I took Kung Fu because I adored Bruce Lee. And I went to see Enter the Dragon, and that first scene, you could see the total focus of energy. I wanted that. And the best people I've ever seen, Bruce Lee on screen, you could not take your eyes off of him, James Brown on stage, and Rudolf Nureyev on stage. No matter what they were doing, you could not take your eyes off of them. And it's that total focus of energy of bringing it all in. And so that's what inspired me. But Nureyev, because I would go to see him all the time in New York, and I was friends with people at Ballet Theater, and so over at the Met. So if I didn't have a ticket, they'd put me up in the light booth, so I was always around. But I remember one night, our stage manager in Search for Tomorrow knew I was a huge Nureyev fan. And so he said, Morgan, I know that guy you like so much. He's at the I'm stage managing at the Met. You want to come meet him? And I said, sure. So I have tickets tonight. Can I come backstage? And they said, yeah, I'll come get you, So he takes me back, and I guess Rudy had felt like he wasn't dancing that well that night. Anyway, Jim takes me back and he says, Morgan, this may not be the best night because he's having one of his fits. He's throwing things in the dressing room, and it's like, maybe. And I said, well, we can skip, we're at this as dressing room door. I said, well, we can skip. And about that time, his dressing room door flies open, and there is Nureyev standing there looking at me. And, I was kind of cute back then. And, and he just kind of melted, and he just looked at me and he says, yes, what do you want? And I said, can you autograph this poster? He signs Rudolf Nureyev, and then he looks at me again and he says, with my very best wishes. And so I got to meet Nureyev, and I met him a few times over the years, but one time my mother had to take off. She'd had a hysterectomy in Texas, and she'd been off for like a year. And I'm like 23, and I'm paying the house payment. And my dad got laid off at Texas Insurance. I'm paying for their car payment. I'm paying for everything. And so Anyway, my mother, every time we'd talk to her, because she was going to have to go back to work, she would talk about, well, I'm just going to kill myself instead, And I'd say, so I said, Mom, don't kill yourself. Come to New York. Come up to New York. Come, I'll take you to the ballet. Da 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 da. So I took Mom to the ballet. I knew she would love Nuria. He was doing Sleeping Beauty, so I took her to a Saturday night Sleeping Beauty, and I would always get seats right down front, because I like to be right down front in the action, and so she was so enamored and so thrilled. And so the next morning, Sunday, we had matinee tickets. Sleeping Beauty, same thing. And I've seen his Sleeping Beauty choreography a million times, And so I thought, I got up early and I thought, I'm going to send him flowers. I know he'll never see them because he gets 5 million flowers a day, but I just want to thank him. And so I wrote about how much it meant to my mother and blah, blah, blah. And thank you so much. And we're here for the round robin of Sleeping Beauties. And we're down front, blah, blah, blah. And so we were down from stage, down right. And so no, I'm going here, down right. So anyway, that Sleeping Beauty, which I'd seen many times, I started thinking, I think he's cheating to our area, just positioning himself on stage. And I think he's cheating it downstage. Anyway, at the end of the show, the Met has curtains like this. And so usually people come out, they come around and they come out and they kind of stay over here because they're going to go back in again. Well, he came out, and of course, to see Nureyev take a curtain call, I mean, it was like watching the Beatles on stage. I mean, flowers rained down. The curtain call would go on for 10, 15 minutes of him just standing there being grand. I mean, I would pay the money to see him take the curtain call. And but instead, he came down stage right and picked up one of the bouquets and leaned over and gave it to my mother. And I thought she would die. And after the show, I had to take her to the ballet shop and buy her every single keychain, fridge magnet, every single thing with Nureyev's picture on it, so she could go back to Texas and not kill herself. And and he gave her hope the same way he gave me hope. Just that magnificence that you could aspire to that level of beauty, of grandeur, of grace, of nobility, got her back not killing herself and going back to teaching. So.
What an amazing, inspiring story for you and your mom. That's amazing. The next question is called No Show. What part did you want but didn't get? We all have that, as an actor. What part did you want to go up for and do, but you didn't get?
Well, there were 2 or 3. I was supposed to be up for, I'm trying to think of the name of the movie. Well, one was Scarface.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then one was, oh God, where De Niro plays the boxer. Kathy
Bull.
Moriarty. Kathy Moriarty got the part. Raging Bull, yeah, and I think Kathy was probably much better for that part than I would have been, But those were 2 that I was supposed to be up for that I was kind of disappointed.
Kind of disappointed. Yeah, I get it. No, I would be. Look, all of us actors, it's not like we're playing around. We want every job we audition for, but there are some that get into our soul that go, "Oh, this would be amazing." Oh, wow, that's a great answer. Okay. Finally, a favorite show. What movie has had the most influence on you, would you say?
Of mine or somebody else's?
No, outside of you, something that you've watched that you go, oh, I'm really impressed by this and it's influenced me.
Well, I just said one was Enter the Dragon, which I've watched. I would go in the 70s when, now 42nd Street is all Disney-fied, but back then it was really kind of dangerous. And I would go to those 42nd Street theaters with my hair up and no makeup and my glasses on and hide in the theater and watch Enter the Dragon like 5 times in a row, just for that focus of energy. I mean, I loved Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee, I just adored.
If you gave me 1,000,000 years, I would have never guessed Enter the Dragon, but it's the perfect answer for you.
Well, in Casablanca, that's one of my favorite movies. New Year's Eve, I would always go, I think it was to the Little Carnegie, one of the old theaters there. in New York, I would always go New Year's Eve to see Casablanca with a double bill with something else. And that's how I would spend New Year's Eve. And then I'd come out and walk home, after people down on 42nd Street had gotten drunk and gone home or passed out.
Right. More than likely passed out. Well, Morgan, thank you for being a part of the show. You are totally inspiring. You were an amazing guest, and I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Well, thank you, and please say hello to your wife, and thank you for all the trick questions, and thank you for having me. It's been really fun, and I hope I get to see you around town again.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux, Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Hey, everybody, I'm so glad that you're enjoying the podcast and checking it out. It is an audio podcast wherever you get your audio podcast, and it's a video podcast over on YouTube. My socials are all patrick.labyorteaux, and that is on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok. I'm everywhere. If you want information on the school, you can go to workingactorsschool.com. We have classes going all the time. It's a lot of fun. I suggest you check it out. Hey, we'll see you next time.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux, Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.